Okay, so in today's session we're going to cover completing a square, and it can look quite complicated because we can end up with surds, we can end up with fractions, but actually it's a fairly simple method to follow. So we're going to start off with some really easy examples and we'll work our way up in sort of complexity here. So let's start off with a nice simple x squared plus, let's say, 6x equals 0. Okay, now the actual term for the method means that I want to find an expression that when I square it will equal an equivalent result. Okay, so what I'm going to do is look at this left hand side here. I'm going to take half of whatever my coefficient of x is, my multiplier of x is, and I'm going to square the result of that. Okay, let me just write that back in, and then we're going to add that to both sides. So hopefully you'll see what I mean in just a second. So I'm going to do x squared half of, did I have plus 6x there? Sorry, plus 6x. Half of positive 6 is 3. So, and then I have to square that number. Okay, so 3 squared is 9. So I'm now going to have plus 9 on the left. And of course I must do the same thing to the right. So 0 add 9 is 9. Okay. I now am in the situation where I want to think of a way of factorizing this to create the left hand side. Okay, the easiest way to do that is just to half the expression of 6x, so the 6 to make 3. Okay, and if I squared it, and hopefully you can see if I was to multiply out this particular bracket, I'd end up with x squared plus 3x plus another 3x to make 6x, and then of course 3 times 3 is 9. So I've got exactly the same expression as I've got above on that left hand side, and on the right I've still got the 9. Okay, next step we're going to do is to square root. Okay, so that just leaves me a nice plain x plus 3 on the left hand side, and I've got the square root of 9. I've got both the positive and negative result of that. Okay, because don't forget, for instance, positive 3 times positive 3 is positive 9, but also negative 3 times negative 3 is also 9. And now I can go ahead and simplify. So I'm going to do the isolation at the same time. So I'm going to take away 3 from both sides. So I've got negative 3, and I've got this option to add or subtract the square root of 9, which is 3. So my result for this particular example is negative 3 add 3, which is 0, or it's negative 3 take 3, which is negative 6. And that's my solution for this first step. Okay, let's have a go at a second example. So we're going to make it a little bit harder now. Okay, so for our next example, we're going to have 3 terms. Okay, so I'm going to have x squared, add, let's say, 4x. Let's add 2 to that equals 0. Okay, now with this example, I want to remove any constants that are on the same side as my x expression. So it's the 2 that I need to deal with first. I'm going to take 2 from both sides. Okay, so I've just taken 2 away from the left and the right. Now I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. So I'm going to half the expression in front of the x. So we've got 4 here, so we're going to half 4 to make 2. And then don't forget we've got to square that result. So 2 squared is in fact 4. So we've got 4x. Now I'm adding 4, and of course I must add 4 to the other side as well. So negative 2 add 4 is 2. And now I can complete the square. So I've got to half the expression in front of x, which is 4. So that's going to give me 2. And over on this side I've got 2, and mustn't forget that square symbol there, okay? And again, if I expanded that bracket, I would end up with the exact same expression that's above on that left-hand side. Now then, I'm going to square root each side. Okay, so I'm left with x plus 2 on the left, but I've also got to square root 2. Now, on our last example, because 9 was a square number, I ended up with a nice whole number. But this time we've got the square root of 2, which is a third. So I'm going to leave it exactly as it is. Now I can isolate my x. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So I'm going to have negative 2, add or subtract the square root of 2. So my expressions, if I was asked to give 2 answers, I'd have negative 2 add root 2, and I'd have x is equal to negative 2 subtract root 2. Okay, and I would leave it, unless told explicitly to do anything else, I'd leave it in exactly that format. Right, let's go for another example, but this time we're going to follow exactly the same method as we have done before, but we are going to deal with some fractions. So I've got x squared, this time I'm going to have 5x, I'm going to subtract 3, and this is what we're going to deal with. So let's see how this one turns out. So first of all, let's move that 3 over to the right hand side. Okay, and now I'm going to do exactly as I've done before. I'm going to half the coefficient of x, the multiplier in front of x. So I'm going to put that into a bracket, and I'm just going to leave it in its fraction form like that. Oh, I apologise. I've missed a step, haven't I? So let's make this a little bit clearer. So half of 5 is going to be 5 over 2. When I square that number, I'm going to end up with 25 over 4. Okay, so that's what I'm going to add and subtract to both sides. So sorry, that was just to make it sort of clear as to what I'm doing. So we end up with x squared plus my 5x plus 25 over 4, and that's equal to 3 plus 25 over 4. Okay, a lot of simplifying to do now. So we are going to half the 5. Again, I'm going to leave it as a fraction. Okay, like that. That's squared. Again, we'll multiply out to be the expression above. And on this side, I'm simply going to simplify that fraction. Okay, so think about it. We want 3 and we want that to be over 4. So we'd end up with 12 over 3 like that, added to 25 over 4, which of course is 37. Oops, why have I put a 3 there? 4, sorry. Let's rewrite that. What was it doing? 12 over 4. So we'd end up with a final result of 37 over 4. Okay, I'm going to just clear that up. There we go. And move that over. There we go. Okay. We now want to square root . I don't know why I've got an additional equal sign there. Let's remove that. So I'm going to have the positive and negative result of the square root of 37 over 4. Which we can write, because we've got the square root of 4. Actually, I'll simplify it as we go on to the next step. So again, I now want to isolate my x. So I'm going to take 5 over 2, and I'm going to have both positive and negative, And I'm going to simplify this now because I can simplify the 4 to become 2. Okay, so 4, the square root of 4 is 2. So it's now just the numerator, the top number in the fraction that is has the root. And then of course I can write out the two answers if I'm required to. So I've got the negative of negative 5 over 2 plus square root of 37 over 2. And then I've also got the negative of that, so negative 5 over 2 subtract 37 over 2. And that is our result, the x, so multiply of the x squared. So multiply it in front of our x squared. So this is the example I'm going to use. We've got 2x squared plus 8x minus 5 is equal to 0. Do you know what? No, that's fine. I'll leave it as it is. You could divide by 2 immediately, but I'm going to stick to the same steps as I've been doing so far. So I'm going to get rid of the constants. I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And now, before I move on, I'm going to want to just deal when I have a singular multiple of x squared. Okay, so I want to divide by 2. So I'll end up with 4x here, and on this side I'll end up with 5 over 2. Half of 4, of course, is 2. 2 squared is our key approach, so we're going to have to add 4 to both sides. And now I want to find the complete the square on the left, so I'm just going to put that into a bracket. X plus half of 4 is 2 squared, and then of course on the other side I'm just going to do a little bit of simplifying. So actually I'd end up with 8 over 2, so I'm going to add 8 and 5 together. Okay. Next, I want to find the square root. In fact, what I'm going to do, just to simplify it, so I'm going to multiply it all over 4. So essentially I'm going to do 10 over 4 plus 16 over 4. Okay, and this will come clear in a second. It's just about simplifying my fraction, so I'm going to end up with 26 over 4. Okay, it'll make it simpler in just a second. Okay, so equivalent fraction, the denominator is now a square number. It's just for a little bit of clarity in a second. So now I want to do the square root. So plus 2 is equal to both the positive and negative root of 26 over 4. Hopefully you can see what will happen now to that 4. And now I want to isolate my x. So I'm going to subtract 2. And I know it's going to be positive and negative, and this is where I'm going to just do a little bit of simplifying. So the square root will stay with 26, but I'm going to square root the 4 to make 2. I hope that makes sense now, why I did that. And now, of course, I can look to write out my answers separately if it's necessary. It may not be necessary. Please read your question very carefully and look at the sorts of answers that you are expected to give. Okay, and now we have our result. Okay, I hope you followed that. And like I said, if you just are very systematic about how you solve your complete and square questions, you will succeed. And good luck with those.